Your life is being shaped by a part of you that you've never met. Right now, as you listen to these words, a vast intelligence beneath your awareness is filtering reality, choosing what you notice, deciding what feels true. You've been trying to change your life with the 50 bits per second your conscious mind can handle. By the end of this, you'll understand why the real work happens in the 11 million bits flowing underneath. Think about what happened the last time you walked into a room full of strangers. Before you formed a single conscious thought, something in you had already scanned every face, registered the temperature, catalogued the exits, detected the emotional tone of 3 separate conversations, and decided whether you were safe. All of that took less than a second. Your conscious mind showed up late, carrying maybe one observation: scenes crowded. That gap between 50 and 11 million is where your entire experience of reality gets built. Your subconscious mind processes roughly 11 million bits of sensory data every second. Your conscious mind handles about 50. The ratio is staggering. For every single bit you're aware of, over 200,000 bits are being processed without your knowledge. Your waking awareness, the part you call me, is a tiny flashlight beam moving across the surface of an ocean. And that ocean has opinions. Every belief you hold about money, love, health, and what's possible for you lives in that deeper processing layer. The subconscious took notes during every experience you've ever had, every offhand comment from a parent, every rejection, every moment where you felt small, unseen, or insufficient. It catalogued all of it and built a filtration system so sophisticated that you now mistake its output for objective reality. When you look at your bank account and feel a specific tightness in your chest, that response was constructed from thousands of data points you can't consciously access. The feeling arrives fully formed, as if it's simply the truth about your situation. Neville Goddard understood this architecture decades before neuroscience confirmed the numbers. He taught that the subconscious mind is the creative medium of your experience, that it accepts the impressions you feed it and builds your world accordingly. He called it the fertile ground. Whatever seeds you plant there, through sustained feeling and vivid assumption, will eventually push through the surface as circumstances. The conscious mind selects the seed, the subconscious grows the forest. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to plant new seeds in daylight, using willpower and affirmations, while 11 million bits per second are still running the old program underneath. You felt this. You stand in front of the mirror and say, "I am wealthy," and something in your gut whispers back a quiet correction. That whisper carries more processing power than your affirmation by a factor of 200,000 to 1. The contest is over before it begins. So how do you reach the part of you that actually builds reality? Goddard's answer was precise. The state akin to sleep, that drowsy window between waking and sleeping, where the conscious mind's grip loosens and the subconscious becomes receptive. In that state, the 50-bit gatekeeper steps aside. The critical faculty, that analytical filter constantly checking whether new information matches existing beliefs, goes quiet. And for a few minutes, you have direct access to the engine room. This is why visualization done while fully alert often feels hollow. Your conscious mind is actively cross-referencing every image against its database of what's realistic. 11 million bits of stored evidence push back against your 50 bits of intention. The math is brutal. But in that hypnagogic state, the ratio shifts. The subconscious receives the new image without resistance, processes it as experience rather than fantasy, and begins reorganizing around it. Joseph Murphy described this same principle through a different lens. He compared the subconscious to a garden that grows whatever you plant. Flowers or weeds, it makes no distinction. The soil has no preference. It responds to the emotional quality of the impression, the felt reality of what you feed it. A fear held with deep feeling plants just as effectively as a desire held with deep feeling. The subconscious is loyal to intensity, and it cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a physical one. That last point deserves your full attention. When you worry, when you run a catastrophic scenario through your mind with genuine emotional charge, your subconscious processes it with the same 11 million bits it would use for an actual event. Your body responds, your filtering system adjusts. The next day, you notice more evidence supporting the worry, because the subconscious updated its search parameters overnight. You think you're observing reality getting worse. You're observing your filtration system confirming what you fed it before bed. The discipline of mental diet becomes clear in this light. Every thought held with feeling is an instruction to a system processing 200,000 times more information than you can consciously track. Every assumption sustained over time becomes a filter through which 11 million bits get sorted every second of every day. The subconscious doesn't evaluate whether your assumptions serve you. It builds around them with absolute obedience. This is where the inner work gets demanding. Changing a conscious thought takes a moment. Changing the instruction set running across 11 million bits takes sustained, patient repetition. You're reprogramming a system that's been running the current code for years, sometimes decades. The old patterns have momentum. They've carved grooves so deep that your default emotional responses feel like facts about the world rather than habits of interpretation. The technique Goddard returned to again and again was sleeping in the wish fulfilled. Construct a short scene that implies your desire is already realized. Something simple, a conversation, a handshake, a specific image that could only exist in the reality you want. Then, in that drowsy state before sleep, loop the scene with feeling. Let it become more real than the room around you. When the scene starts to feel natural rather than forced, the subconscious has accepted it. You've planted the seed in fertile ground, past the gatekeeper, into the processing layer that actually shapes tomorrow. The patience required here is genuine. Some people feel shifts within days. Others work for weeks before the outer world begins to rearrange. The variable is how deeply the old programming runs, and how completely you can saturate the new impression with feeling. A lukewarm visualization bounces off the subconscious like rain off glass. A scene held with the warmth and specificity of actual memory soaks in and takes root. Consider what happens when you fall in love. Nobody teaches you to obsess. Nobody hands you a visualization schedule. Your subconscious locks onto the person and begins processing 11 million bits per second through a new filter. Suddenly you see their car model everywhere. Songs remind you of them. Random words in conversations trigger their memory. You didn't consciously decide to reorganize your perception of reality around this person. Your subconscious did it automatically because the emotional impression was strong enough to rewrite the filtering system in a single evening. That same mechanism is available to you for any state you choose to occupy. The difference is that falling in love happens to you. While consciously impressing, the subconscious requires deliberate effort against the current of existing programming. You're doing voluntarily what usually only happens through intense emotional experience. And that's exactly why the drowsy state matters so much. It lowers the barrier between intention and impression. One practical shift you can make tonight: pay attention to what you think about in the last 5 minutes before sleep. Most people replay the day's frustrations, mentally rehearse tomorrow's problems, or scroll through content that triggers anxiety and comparison. Every one of those impressions enters the subconscious during its most receptive window. You're handing the 11 million bit processor its nightly instructions, and you're telling it to build more of what you don't want. Replace that window. Choose your scene. Choose the feeling of the life you're stepping into. Hold it gently, without strain. The subconscious responds to naturalness, to the quality of something already true. Strain communicates wanting. Naturalness communicates having. The difference between those two signals determines what the subconscious builds next. The gap between 50 and 11 million bits is where your old life maintains itself, and where your new life takes shape. You've been fighting circumstances with conscious effort, trying to rearrange furniture in a house that rebuilds itself every night according to deeper blueprints. The blueprints live in the subconscious. Change the blueprint, and the house has no choice but to conform. Tonight, when your eyes grow heavy and the room starts to blur, you hold the keys to a system more powerful than any circumstance you're facing. The gatekeeper is stepping aside. What will you hand to the builder?